Welcome once again to At the Tubies, my ongoing series where we recommend Tubi videos for you to check out. If you're not familiar with Tubi, it's a absolutely free website that's full of movies that is sometimes hard to navigate. That's where we come in. I'm joined today with my co-host, Mormo Zine,
Hello, I'm Mormo. Thanks so much for watching.
Rob Zombie Chick 420.
Hello.
For my first film today, I chose Microwave Massacre. It is a movie starring 1960s stand-up comedian Jackie Vernon, best known as the voice of Frosty the Snowman in those old holiday specials. It tells the story of a man who is in an unhappy marriage. His wife has stopped using the oven and she has exclusively turned to the microwave, which apparently is one of the first microwaves on the market and is as big as an oven, if not bigger. His wife's always making him very grande meals. She calls them fancy, and they are pretty fancy for coming from a microwave. It's not food you would typically associate with a microwave. He's more of a ham and cheese kind of guy, meat and potatoes, and he never gets that. He's always getting some fancy, trendy food his nagging wife's giving him. One day he flips and he kills his wife. He doesn't know what to do with her. He stores her in the freezer. One day after work, looking for a treat, he accidentally throws his wife's hand into the microwave, thinking it was some hamburger. After taking it out, it smelled so good he decided to try a bite, and he loved it. He just started chowing down on the rest of the body throughout the film. He starts to run out of meat. He has to go find other women to eat, usually hookers or just loose women. This is a very dark comedy. It was originally written for Rodney Dangerfield. He found a second wave of success during that time, so he kind of got too big for a B movie like Microwave Massacre. And that's when they turned to another washed up hack comedian by the name of Jackie Vernon, who employs a similar type of comedy, which is basically just a series of one-liners. At this point, when the movie comes out in the early 1980s, this stuff's pretty dated. And Jackie Vernon's pretty dated.
This really looks great, man. It really does. It even matches the chairs. When it comes to cooking, you'd make a great decorator.
So the comedy of the movie is just horrible. I mean, none of it's funny, but that's what makes it funny.
I wanted to check it out. It sounds like it's amazing.
I've always seen pictures of it in magazines and books, but I've never seen it. I'm gonna have to check it out.
I think I might have saw the DVD at like a flea market one time or something.
Well, the print they're using on Tubi is absolutely amazing. I mean, it looks like a brand new movie. From watching this movie, I ended up buying an old Jackie Vernon vinyl, and even in his heyday, his comedy stylings were every bit as horrendous as what's going on in Microwave Massacre.
Every time a girl would refuse me a date, I'd eat a piece of Bavarian cream pie. One day I ate 238 pieces of Bavarian cream pie. I was getting so heavy I had to let out the shower curtain. I'd step on a scale, the card would read, "Come back later, alone."
You may think that I don't really think this movie's funny, but scratch that. It's absolutely fucking hilarious. I've watched it 2 or 3 times and I love it every time. It's kind of like one of those 80s sex comedies mixed with a horror film, wedging in a one-liner hack comedian from the 1960s who's way over the hill for this type of movie. It's just Bizarro World times 10, and I love it.
I definitely want to check it out. It sounds like a fun time. Just the name alone just makes me want to watch it. Microwave Massacre.
I love horror movies that are based on new technology like Videodrome and Existence, the 2 David Cronenberg movies, but like they make movies about something that's new. There's got to be tons of examples of new technology.
This is basically playing on the fears of that microwave technology, which we all know is absolutely safe.
Hold on, was there a fear of microwaves back then?
Oh yeah, I think my grandmother wouldn't use a microwave, I remember.
That's funny that people were scared of microwaves.
Well, it's radiation, you know what I mean? They don't understand how it works. I mean, they just know that they're using radiation. You know, they say that the microwave does alter the molecular structure of stuff you're cooking, and that could possibly cause some cancers or something like that. There's no proof of that, you know.
I never thought about it that way, honestly.
Well, moving on, Mormo, what is your first pick?
My first pick is called Penny Pinchers 2. I actually found it on Tubi by searching Joel D. Wynkoop. I read the description, saw it was directed by Dustin Ferguson, who's a LA filmmaker I'm a big fan of. So I checked it out, and it's basically interviews with all of these low budget and no budget film directors with like clips from their movies talking about how and why they make these low budget and no budget movies. My good Facebook friend Joe Castro is in the movie, and I interviewed him on my channel before. It was a great movie. I really enjoyed it, really inspiring. I love to hear about low budget and no budget filmmakers. I enjoyed it. It was really good and free, so.
That's all that matters. It was free. I had to pay shit.
Yeah, I think for up-and-coming filmmakers, those type of documentaries you can get a lot out of, you know.
Definitely, I learn a lot every time I watch one of them, and I think there's obviously a Penny Pinchers Part 1. I'll probably go back and check that one out if it's on Tubi.
And if you're a penny pincher filmmaker, Tubi's free, so you can't get any more penny pincher than that. You know what I mean?
They gotta owe me money. Being a filmmaker myself, I'm definitely curious to check out other filmmakers, like documentaries or like commentaries over, like, you know, something like that would be interesting for me to watch, learn more. As much as I know now, back then I would love to, the more knowledge, the better videos I make or the better films I make. So definitely that's something I want to check out for sure.
Right on, yeah, it's an awesome movie. A lot of people, some people I'm familiar with, some people I'm not familiar with, but you also get to see clips from their films. A lot of people I've networked with. The guy who directed it, Dustin Ferguson, I bought his rap album, and it's like hardcore gay West Coast rap. I used to blast it in my car and stuff. I loved it. It was awesome, and he's a great rapper, great director. He's a very prolific director. I think he's trying to break a world record, actually, of directing the most horror movies.
That would be an accomplishment for sure.
Yeah, he's great. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I like that movie you did last week, Dirty Cop No Donut, with that Wynkoop guy. So I'm probably going to check this out. Rob Zombie Chick 420. What is your pick?
My pick is a familiar film. Everybody knows it, but I feel like it doesn't get as talked about as much as the original. For me personally, that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Now, this film it's not a direct sequel to the original one. It's like it completely does a total 180. It's more of a black comedy than a horror film, and which I think at that point they're like, well, we can't really go more extreme than the first one. More like, so let's do a complete 180 and make it a black comedy, which it successfully does well for me. I think the whole scene with the guys driving, and then that fucking, they have this, like, I don't even know what you would call it, like a scarecrow or like a dummy or whatever, and it's like Leatherface is holding it with the chainsaw, and these guys are just like, what, freaking the fuck out, and they're on this radio show as well as this is happening, which I think is probably one of my favorite scenes in a horror movie, is that them riding down that road and that fucking, and Leatherface with the chainsaw in the truck I thought that was fucking dope.
Yeah, I loved it. When I lived in San Diego in Ocean Beach, I had an apartment right on the beach, and there was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 poster up on the wall. The Breakfast Club poster.
Oh, I love that poster.
I'm a big fan of that film. I like it more than Part 1, to be honest.
Same here. I thought it was better than Part 1.
Yeah, probably a lot more rewatchable.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is one of my all-time favorite films. In fact, for about 4 or 5 years, I would go spend every Halloween, I would camp out behind the back of the gas station from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre that was filmed in Bastrop, Texas.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
They were going to tear that down about 10 years ago, and a fan crowdsourced the money to buy that, and he's turned it into like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre / barbecue house.
That's awesome.
And they have cabins in the back. So I would rent a cabin every Halloween, and they have one of the best haunted houses I've ever been to called Scream Hollow just down the street. It's basically, I mean, a couple square miles of woods have been removed at the site where a bunch of early settlers got killed by American Indians, like a couple hundred of them. And they have multiple haunted houses. They have a town built around the haunted houses in there with like spooky cafes and stuff. I mean, it's a really good time. But anyway, one Halloween they had the girl from the radio station was there she was staying in one of the cabins there, and we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 outside on a big inflatable screen with her.
That's awesome.
And I got to talk to her, and I got some autographs and pictures with her. The gas station is originally from Part 1. I have to say Part 1 in my heart is my favorite because it's one of the first horror films I ever seen that really scarred my brain. I can remember that scene with the hitchhiker like yesterday. You know, I can still like see it in my head. Also, when he hangs that girl on the meat hook in Part 1, that was one of the most brutal things I'd ever seen in my life up to that point. You know what I mean? I was way too young to be watching that shit.
Is Part 1 on Tubi?
Texas Chainsaw Part 1 is on Tubi. 1 and 2 are the only two they have.
Right on. Good to know. That's awesome. Check out Part 1 as well, for sure.
Tubi needs to get the other ones on there.
That's a great double feature for today if you want to check it out.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I feel like, is very underrated. I definitely don't feel like it's talked about as much as the original. By far, it's like a lot of people like try to forget about Part 2. A lot of people just don't want to talk about the sequels at all. A lot of people hate the sequels, some of the sequels I think are great, like Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. Not a lot of people hate Part 4, but I love Part 4. And I thought the remake was great, and the prequels are fucking garbage. But Part 2 is a really underrated gem, like especially for the Chop Top character played by Bill Moseley. It's probably one of the greatest characters in any horror movies, Chop Top.
That's a great scene. I mean, everything about that movie is good. And I also want to mention it had Dennis Hopper, who is one of the greatest actors of all time. And I think he was in a really bad time in his life around that time. He was kind of taking some bad B movies. I think he had a reputation for being hard to work with. And I think he was doing drugs and partying a lot. This was right before he had a career resurgence with Speed and some other movies, right before he died. But you can tell, I think, while watching this movie, that Dennis Hopper really is unhinged. I felt like probably some of the people on the set were kind of scared of this guy, you know what I mean?
Get them suckers a time or two.
Dennis Hopper looked like he was coked out of his mind in this movie.
He probably was.
Dang.
If you get one of the greatest actors of all time in your sequel horror film, there's probably something going on behind the scenes we don't know about, you know?
He's doing some lines with Leatherface.
It's definitely a classic. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's so funny and entertaining and everything. Definitely check it out.
Did you know the original sequel for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was going to be called American Massacre?
Yeah, I think, didn't they like shoot a little trailer for it?
Yeah, they did. Like, and Chop Top was coming back, and everybody was like, there was a bunch of characters coming back, and then it never got made. The movie never got released, which is very disappointing because they brought back that Chop Top character, and we haven't seen the Chop Top character since the second one. It's never been brought back, which is very disappointing. That as much as people love that character, and I'm sure Bill Moseley would love to play that character again.
I think he performed at Universal Studios as that character.
I mean, I think honestly, if they said, "Hey, we're going to do a Chop Top movie," yeah, I think you would make money.
Did Moseley put out a record with Buckethead under Chop Top?
If he did, I haven't seen it, and I need to.
He's a musician, I know.
I think he did.
We don't mind the day I left, the weather was bone dry. Sun so hot, I froze to death, Susanna, don't you cry. Oh, Susanna, don't cry.
We'll be back right after this.
Evil from us deliver, but temptation into not us lead, and us again.
that is the sound of a train, but that's actually the sound of a prison sex train being ran on Johnny Cash.
Probably, I heard a rumor that when you sign a record label, you sign your contract in blood, and then they say, go in that room over there. They bend you over a table, and the whole record label comes in to runs a train on you.
Here at Mormo International, we love our fans. They are the most intelligent, passionate, and fiercely independent individuals on this planet. That's why we strive to bring them the very best of underground entertainment in movies, music, magic, and zines. We realize that concepts like making a profit and breaking even are old-fashioned. That's why you will receive our products for little to no charge. So join Mormo on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and always remember,
ours the magic, ours the power.
Welcome back to At the Tubi. For my next film, I chose I Drink Your Blood. This movie is from the very early 1970s. It is about a group of hippie travelers who, I have to say, they were probably modeled after the Manson family. It was probably a movie that came out trying to capitalize on the fears of the Manson family at the time. Also traveling with the Manson family is just some bizarre wedged in 60-year-old Asian lady who they all seem to respect, and for some reason we never really exactly find out why. The freaky group of travelers end up in the middle of nowhere in some backwoods hill town with very few residents. There they stop at the only store in town, which is run by a little boy and his sister, where they sell meat pies to travelers passing through. One thing leads to another. The sister goes off with the hippies to hang out. She ends up getting sexually assaulted, but still alive and able to go home, all tattered and beat up. Everyone wants to kill these hippies, but the law is getting involved, telling them they'll take care of it, and they're not doing anything. While the little boy is pissed, he happens to come across a dead dog with foam all over its mouth. He knew it had died from rabies. He hatches a plan to get his granddad's diabetic syringe, take rabid dog blood, and put it in the meat pies, knowing the hippies come in there every day to get their meat pie breakfast. After consuming the tainted meat pies, the hippie travelers slowly descend into madness as rabies begins to consume them. They begin foaming at the mouth. They begin attacking everybody. The whole town turns to chaos, and Bedlam takes over.
Wow. Isn't Lynn Lowry in this one?
Yeah, she is in it.
Lynn Lowry was a beauty then and is a beauty now for sure. She's a wonderful actress. I'd recommend anything she's in, basically.
Now, I have seen this movie.
Oh, you have?
I have seen it because once you brought up the meat pies and the syringe, I'm like, okay, I've seen this movie. I actually watched it on Tubi, so yeah, I did see it. I did enjoy this movie. Really fucked up movie, but it was really good.
It from Netflix back in the day, and big fan of
We don't talk about Netflix here.
Have you seen this one, Mormo?
Yeah, I have. It's been a long time, but I think I probably rented it from Netflix back in the day. And big fan of
We don't talk about Netflix here. Only Tubi.
It was actually titled something else. I forget the original title, but a producer packaged it with another movie, and he changed the two titles to I Drink Your Blood, I Eat Your Skin, and then he ran them around the country as a double feature.
That's awesome. I've seen those ads in magazines and books before.
Like, I've only seen 2 horror movies with meat pies involved, and this is one of them.
Is it Auntie Lee's Meat Pies?
Yes, that's another great movie. That movie's fucking weird.
The great Pat Morita.
Sweeney Todd was about meat pies too.
I like meat pies. I get those Jamaican meat pies in the frozen food section.
I heard those are good.
Oh, they were bomb.
Nice.
Never had a meat pie. I try to stay away from them after watching these 2 movies. Like, I don't trust them.
Mormo, what's your next film?
My next film is Bride with White Hair. I was really stoked to find this. What I did was I went to the search bar and search for the producer Choi Hark. This was one of the movies that came up, so he must have like produced it or executive produced it or something. But it's a really cool thing to do on Tubi, is to search by actor or search by director. But Bride with White Hair is a kung fu fantasy movie. It's about like flying kung fu people back in the Ming Dynasty or something, and it's dubbed, thank God it's dubbed, but like it's it starts out really slow. It's like it has a post film credit scene with all of these like Chinese character credits, and so you have to sit through all that, and I was just wondering, like, is this dubbed or is it not dubbed? And then, yeah, it's dubbed, and it's a good dub, really good quality picture. I think it's from like 93. I saw it on a bootleg when I was in high school and loved it back then, love it now. It's pretty gruesome. It's got like graphic gore and stuff. And there's where like blood sprays in a fine mist. It's got some good nudity. It's got some hilarious like love-making scenes. Lots of flying and kung fu craziness and people getting their head chopped off and all kinds of stuff like that. It's a really fun movie. There is a sequel. There's a part 2. So if you like it, you can binge part 1 and part 2 back to back.
Yeah, I love those old like Shaw Brothers films. I know the type of film you're talking about where they're like flying around.
Wire Fu.
Yeah, I haven't seen that particular film, but it does sound interesting, and it's exactly the type of thing I would check out on Tubi because I'm not for sure if I would like it or not, so I could see it for free on Tubi, and if I wanted to purchase it later, I could do that. I'm definitely going to check it out.
I'm definitely intrigued, mostly from what Mormo was describing it as. It's definitely something right up my alley, like the gore and all that stuff. So it's definitely on my list for sure to check out.
So again, the movie is Bride with White Hair. The Bride with White Hair doesn't show up until the very end. I'll just give that away. It's a really fun movie, like I say, just very fast-paced, lots of karate and kung fu and wire fu, flying people. It's just a totally rad movie. Check it out for sure on Tubi.
Rob Zombie Chick, what's your next pick?
Speaking of getting heads cut off, we're going to be talking about Twilight Zone, the movie. And this movie is very controversial for that exact reason. One of the actors and 2 children actors got their heads completely decapitated by a fucking helicopter. Yeah, the 2 kids got their heads chopped off as well. This movie definitely, like I said, has a lot of controversy behind it. However, the director basically went to court over it, and I don't think they didn't claim him as guilty. As a movie itself, the movie's great. Like, I thought all 5 parts of the movie was great. The beginning part of the movie is this guy basically is a racist white guy, and basically he's turned, and he doesn't know he's like a different race, but everybody sees him as a black guy, and he's getting treated really terribly, and doesn't understand why. He thinks they're crazy. He's like, I'm a white guy, why are you treating me like this? And basically getting a taste of his own medicine, which I thought was a unique part. To be honest, I thought that was really unique to do that. Like, there's a lot of unique parts in this movie that I'm surprised they went with. When did you guys see the Twilight Zone, the movie? Did you see it in theaters or?
I saw it on VHS, but I can't remember who I watched it with.
I saw it at the movie theaters as a little kid. I grew up a huge Twilight Zone fan, and I love Rod Serling. By the way, a very interesting guy to deep dive on if you're ever bored. The thing that stands out to me about this movie is the scene with the gremlin. And that's one of the standout episodes of Twilight Zone.
Oh, for sure. That's one of the best ones.
Did they remake every single segment from a show?
I don't think so.
I think it really became part of 80s pop culture. I think everybody in the 80s saw that scene.
That's definitely one of the best updated scenes from the show. Like, they redid that for the movie, and I think it was done better, obviously, because the effects of the creature, the gremlin, looks a lot better than the TV show by a mile.
Yeah, the TV show is just so iconic. I mean, for those that don't know and say, oh, that's before my time, every single episode's been turned into some kind of movie via ripoff. You know, they change everything around, but the plot lines and the storylines, just the way they were cranking these out every week back in the day, is just so impressive. You know, because they really do have some very complicated plot twists. You know, that are sometimes mind blowing for an old fucking TV show like that.
Yeah, I still watch old episodes of The Twilight Zone, and I think they still hold up, being like really good and just really good at storytelling. And like the movie does is great as well. If there was, I could say, a weak part of the movie was probably the old timers episode where everybody grows old. I thought that was kind of, I think that might have been directed by Steven Spielberg, I think, but I can't remember.
The Twilight Zone tragedy is the first news story I remember growing up. I've read a book about the Twilight Zone tragedy and how
he had to go to court and everything, and they found him not guilty though. So
The actor that got killed, Vic Morrow, I was a little kid. He was before my time, but I remember my grandparents were really freaked out that Vic Morrow got decapitated. You know, it wasn't. I think a lot of us younger people don't know the guy, but I think the guy was a huge star back in the day. You know.
surprisingly, that has not happened since then. I think they've gotten better with, which a lot of it's CGI now, so don't really use a lot of practical, like stuff like that, like helicopters and planes. They don't use like practical stuff like that anymore, so that you probably won't see that happen nowadays. Plus, I think filmmakers are more careful and directors are more careful for that not to happen.
Stuntmen still get killed pretty regularly. I remember a few years ago on one of the Transformers sequels, like a steel belt cable came undone and literally cut a stunt lady in half, her whole entire body. And the one that really gets me is there was a stunt man that died during the making of Mr. Rogers, that biopic. It was actually a stunt man that died on that movie. Check it out.
What did he die of?
I think there's like a scene where he's getting out on a ledge of a building or something, and he fell off, or he was just by the ledge of a building, and it was just some freak accident, you know? The stuntman died making Mr. Rogers, man. So, I mean, filmmaking is a dangerous business, folks.
I'm also curious that they have never revisited the Twilight Zone, besides the Jordan Peele show, they have not made another movie or anything like that. Do you think they'll ever make another Twilight Zone like feature-length film, or you think that's out of the water?
It's such an iconic brand. I mean, I think even younger people, if they've not seen the episodes, they've heard the title. Like Mormo's brought up before, those type of titles keep getting regurgitated. The thing of it is, I feel like there was another Twilight Zone TV show before the Jordan Peele one. And,
I remember.
Yeah, that was okay. It was more like Amazing Stories or something like that. It didn't get that great Twilight Zone feel, you know, because Twilight Zone had a feel to it. I mean, it was just its own entity. I mean, first of all, they were doing that show, and a lot of these like fucked up plot lines they were exploring haven't been explored. So now in today's world, there's like, I mean, where do you go from here? But I think with emerging technologies, the world's changing. With technology, it's hard to make a horror film because everybody's got cell phones, GPS. Like, you know, you can't cut the lines, you can't get lost anymore. I think that's where shows like Black Mirror were successful, and I think they came closest to mimicking the Twilight Zone.
Right on. I've played the Twilight Zone slot machine before. It's a lot of fun. And then growing up, KTLA had the Twilight Zone marathon every Thanksgiving. And so I'd watch Twilight Zone all day long on Thanksgiving.
Twilight Zone the movie, I definitely, if you've never seen any of the Twilight Zone, like the show or movie, I definitely would recommend watching the show first before watching this movie. I mean, you don't have to watch the show, but you would get more appreciation from watching the show first than the movie first, because there's some scenes from the show they take from the movie and they update them. The psychic kid who had like distort time, and they do that scene over in this movie, which I still think that the show did more. It's more creepier in the show than the movie, but the effects are better in the movie. But overall, I say if you haven't seen the Twilight Zone or seen anything with the Twilight Zone, definitely check it out. Definitely recommend the Twilight Zone.
Okay, there's 6 more films for you to check out on Tubi this week. Don't forget to let us know what you think in the comments below about any of these movies, or if you have suggestions, or if you want to recommend your own film that's on Tubi. Put it in the comments. Let's get a dialogue going. Mormo Zine, Rob Zombie Chick, 420. We'll all be back next week for 6 more films. Until then, we'll be seeing you at the Tubi.